Hey everyone, my name is Nate Branson, and I am going to answer some questions, frequently asked questions that students ask me every semester that are often sort of universal concepts about writing that can just generally be applied to almost any type of writing, not just academic writing, but I've been meaning to make this video just because it'll be applicable to if you're taking my composition class 111, 112, creative writing, even literature. And the goal here is just to help you give you some perspective about how to just overcome certain writing obstacles that everybody faces anytime they're writing, anytime they're doing a writing project. And so yeah, let's jump in. And I'm going to start off with the first question, and that is, what is the hardest part for you to overcome writer's block? Okay, so I think writer's block is something everybody is familiar with. People mean different things when they talk about writer's block. So it typically depends on what part of the writing process you're at. So one writer's block way to look at things is to think about you've gotten maybe like a page or 2 pages of something, and then you can't move forward, or you feel stuck. So if you're stuck, that would be maybe what some people are talking about when they talk about writer's block. They just don't feel an inspiration to continue editing their essay. And if you're thinking about writer's block like that, that's writer's block in the middle of writing an essay. You've already got stuff on page. So I'll talk about that, and then I'll talk about after that another type of writer's block, actually the one I think people struggle with when they say writer's block. So the first one is just, I've written a draft and I feel like it sucks, and they oftentimes are having feelings of should I just scrap this and start over? I don't know how to fix this to make it sound better. And I will share a story about back in May of 2023. I was writing a online magazine article for my friend Matt, and I'd written I think I'd got a good draft together. I'd probably written like 4 pages, probably like 2,000 words, and so I was supposed to get it to him by the beginning of June, and so I had a lot going, but I just felt just didn't feel like what I was writing was profound, or it wasn't going to be fun for people to read. And I think first thing we want to remember, if you're in the middle of writing something that doesn't feel perfect, or it doesn't feel as meaningful, that is a normal feeling, and I think any writer has to figure out a way to push through that feeling and almost endure and believe that you're going to figure out a way to make this a decent piece of writing or something that can pass. You kind of have to just keep going in a lot of ways. So for me, that's what I did, and I just had to say, Nate, just keep going. And I think that's something that you can underestimate what you have, and actually what you have is a good start, and you've kind of maybe thought about it too much. So I continued to edit it, and I continued to work hard on it, and by the time I got it to Matt, he was a really big fan, my friend Matt, whose magazine it was. And then he helped me edit some of it. So sometimes whenever you feel stuck, if you have somebody else help you edit, that can help you get through that mental space. But the mental space oftentimes is just really like you're not smart, you don't have any business doing this, or this is just not a good idea. And I think that I just think that that's something that people have to know, this normal feeling to feel like your writing is not good enough because you just think about it, it's in process. So bad writing can morph into something if you stick with the revision process. So in other words, bad writing can morph into something good, great, or beyond what you imagined. So just stick with it. And that endurance part is not fun to think about. The other part of writer's block is I don't have an idea about what to write about. I'm kind of drawing a blank in my head, and my brain does not have any ideas at all, or it doesn't have any ideas that I like. And that is actually, I think that was easier to overcome whenever your just mind is blank. Of the two, I think getting stuck in the middle of a paper for myself, and is harder for me to just get out of that area. So what I like to do is you kind of have to open up your mind a little bit and just write down the ideas that come to mind, and just not being able to come up with an idea is just a matter of I would step back and just give yourself time. If you know, like if you got 3 weeks before your paper's due, start brainstorming right now as soon as possible so you can get everything on paper. And so get those ideas on paper. Get out your phone and start to open up the Notes app and open up one of these. Where is it? All right, Notes. There we go. Open up one of these notes and just start writing down ideas on your phone, or a blank piece of paper here. I don't have a blank piece of paper. I get a blank piece of paper and just start writing down your ideas. And just one day, 24 hours, you get writing down ideas, and just put them on paper somewhere you can look at it. And that's the best thing. And so day one, you got some ideas. Day two, you got some ideas. So that by the time you get to the end of the week, you've probably got something worth thinking about. These are different types of writer's block. So writer's block or writer's stuck, I might call it. And then you got writer's block when you don't have an idea. Another idea I would recommend is for coming new ideas. Another question was, how do I find new, unique ideas to write about? How do you find topics that you want to write about? If you're writing a blog entry or something for an essay for college, whatever. And I would say get one of these moleskin journals, and I write mine on any ideas that come to mind. If you start off just jotting down some observations, this is not surprising that an English teacher would have one of these. I've got my Smashing Pumpkin sticker on it. I put a sticker on it just to kind of label it. This was from back 2022. So that is one way to just writing by hand for myself is a different way to explore your brain. I think either writing on a Word document, writing on paper, both are good ways to write. But I think there's something about writing on paper that can help you get your ideas out. So if you do journal, first of all, it's just good for your mind. It's kind of like exercising for your mind to get your thoughts out. And then second of all, if you just write out something in a journal, you can kind of look back at it. So if you're in an English class right now, I would recommend maybe get one of these, or it can be any kind of notebook, and just start to write down ideas you'd like to write about, so that when it comes time for you to actually write something, it's going to be easier. Another one would be the voice memos on your phone. So if you've got the voice memo, the voice memo thing here on your phone, you have all kinds of. I've got one called my doubts. Okay, can't see it. Time flies by like Wordsworth. Just if you're driving down the highway, unload your brain onto that, and it's going to be really helpful for you to get some ideas. Lots of thoughts come to mind. If your teacher, like myself, asks you to write it like about some kind of cultural topic, and you just are riding down the road, so you get a 30-minute drive, and you're just taking some notes on your phone, I'm sure one of those ideas for what you might want to write about could be a great essay topic for a social, some social topic, cultural topic, personal topic. Any of those could probably be great for an essay. But your brain's going, so a great way to do that, take note of it on your voice recording. Now the key is obviously you got to unpack that and listen to it later. Also keep I keep a file on my computer. Any college student probably should do this. If it's probably a good idea to have some file on your computer to just say things that I'm learning, questions that I'm asking. I've got a big file on my computer that I started back in 2021. It's these questions that I'm asking, and some of them my questions are: how do you slow down time? How can I experience time at a slower rate? I mean, just sort of philosophical questions like that. What is our perception of time? That's one of the questions I've been asking probably for 10 years, and I still haven't really found a really good answer on that. But anyways, it's questions that are hard like that one that I'm not sure that I have a quick answer for, but also questions that are just what makes me curious, and that's going to help you find a good topic. So somebody asked me, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received about writing? And this is sort of the actually general advice that I answer this with this because I've heard it from so many different professional authors and famous authors. And this piece of advice is a sort of consistent way to answer this question. And if I put it in a sentence, a habitual writing schedule is the best way to complete writing projects or to generate material. So, in other words, you're going from after you get off work, maybe at 5 o'clock, you come home and you write from 7 to 8 o'clock or 5 to 6 o'clock. Maybe writing's the first thing you do when you get off work, or lots of people writing in the morning. So you get up at 7 a.m. and then you write from 7 to 7:30 or 7 to 8. That just 1 hour a time of writing can make a big difference for productivity. So in terms of productivity, I've found that to be the most effective. So a habitual writing schedule is the best. And the reason is the best piece of advice I've found, and also I think we all want some shortcut to become a efficient or productive writer or better writer, and then that particular piece of advice is not flashy at all. It's kind of be like, was there some other, some other way? I haven't found. I've been writing for 20 years. 20 years ago I became an English major, and I've always kind of been searching for that secret, the secret to writing really, writing well. So if I had the secret, I would give it to you. But in my experience, 20 years ago, I've read a lot of books about how to write better, how to write well, how to write faster, and the habitual writing schedule is one I actually read about recently again by a UNCW professor, and she was talking about how she completed her novel about writing every day for an hour, or it could be a word count. Now on the flip side, if you're thinking about writing your paper all at once, and sometimes you have to do that, and that's fine. If you have to write an essay and you have to spend 5 hours on Saturday and 5 hours on a Sunday writing something. That happens sometimes. But if you can try to avoid that and sort of stretch it out over the course of 2 weeks or a week, so that you're not, or longer. Like I said, that article I read the article I wrote this summer, I started 3 months out before it got published. So one UNCG professor named Paul Sylvia, he says that he writes from 8 o'clock to 10 a.m. Every weekday, and he does that because he's an academic researcher. So he says that's the most productive way. And he wrote a book called How to Write a Lot, and he's talking about just being productive writer. And he says there are binge writers. So if you're trying to do everything in 5 hours or 2 days back to back, he says binge writers spend more time feeling guilty and anxious about not writing than schedule followers spend writing. And so he says that if you're a binge writer, sometimes you can just have this underlying anxiousness about not writing. And so he thinks it's better just to say, I'm going to write for 1 hour today, and then I know that I've done that. I've tried. I've got a little bit out of the way. He says that makes writing us overall a less anxious experience. And then he says there's people who say, well, I'm just not I got to wait on the inspiration. And he says that, or they'll say, I'm not really a schedule follower. And he says that people like that, he says, well, you can find time to go to bed on time, go to watch television at a certain time. You have found time to work out. You found time to spend time with your significant other or your friends, scheduling those things. Well, try to do the same thing with your writing. And along with that, I got a presentation in front of the president and the vice president of the community college that I teach at, and on Tuesday. Today is Saturday, and I'm following the same principle. I'm going to write an hour today, an hour or two tomorrow, probably 2 hours on Monday, and then probably an hour. So I'll probably have 5 hours of preparation for this presentation. So those presentations are writing, basically. I mean, that's how we do presentations a lot of times. So I will have 5 hours, but I'm spreading out, so I'm not going to just binge into it. So that's probably my main piece of general advice, which I get a lot. Another way to think about that is that you can write it like if you're a fiction writer or you're trying to write something really long, you can try to write like 1,000 words a day. That's kind of how Stephen King operates. He goes by word count, so he'll sit down at 9 a.m. and just make himself write 1,000 words of his story that he's writing. And so if you're interested in becoming a fiction writer, Stephen King's novel On Writing is excellent. Anybody who I've only read like 2 of Stephen King's books. I don't like horror, but his ability to get fictional novels, just completed is I don't think there's anybody who's alive right now who can do it like he can do it. And so his memoir On Writing is incredibly helpful for anybody who wants to be a fiction writer. So if you're interested in that, I highly recommend that book, even if you don't like his style. And so I am saying that the hope there is the discipline works. The downside, the bad news, is that I don't have a secret shortcut. Somebody asked how. This is what a student asked me 2 or 3 times this past semester. Different students through. How can I strengthen my vocabulary? And I would say, just if you are reading something and you don't know the definition of something, just get a dictionary and look it up, and then make a list. And maybe just look up words after you've heard them. After you do that, I would recommend copying and pasting that into a Word document. That's what I did in college, and I have this list here. of words that I do not know the meaning of. This is from like 15 years ago. I found that document on my computer and I printed it off. And one of my favorite words on here is desultory. And that's kind of wavering, unsteady, erratic. I like that word a lot. So I like a lot of these words. I don't use on a regular basis, but some of them just really get I really love and sometimes will use them. Or they'll just be stored in my brain as I know what they are. So if you want to strengthen your vocabulary, just look up stuff when you're reading. And of course you want to be reading if you want to be a better writer. So as you're reading, look up words you do not know. And another thing that can improve your vocabulary is if you read more of the classics, classic literature from England. Or I'm saying that just because I'm teaching British literature. You're going to find a lot of words you don't know in some of the novels, some of the classic novels, and it'll just broaden your not only your vocabulary but your way of sentence structure, thinking about sentences. Another student asked, "How can I improve my writing from just mediocre to really good? After spending a significant amount of time on an assignment, I find myself struggling to get through my paper to proofread. I think it's partially from being mentally strained from trying to write the paper, and my writing is subpar." That is a great question. How do you get from mediocre to good to great? And I would say to you, the first thing is just to force yourself to show your work to somebody. So let's say, let me just give an example about my presentation that I have pretty soon. I'm going to give my presentation that I'm going to show to the president of the community college to a group of my coworkers, and they're going to critique my presentation. And that's going to be on Monday. Today's Saturday. They're going to critique it. So it's not going to be pretty when I do this on Monday, but if you can have somebody show up, and if you can email your writing to somebody else, and you can be open enough to take some feedback. You probably already know that, but again, it's one of those things that it just works. Okay, that's one of those things that just works. I was also in a writing group. The other part of to get there's something about making it public that when you have to share it with somebody that makes it so much more high stakes. Okay, so I was for 2 years in a writing Carteret Writers. I was in a writing group with the group of people for 2 years. So every 2 weeks I had to have something I had to present, and when I would present those things, every time I presented, I would have to present it to a friend or two. So it wasn't easy to do that, but just making it public, having a person you can show it to. And one of my friends was Allison Daniel, and she was there every week, and I would give her my writing. She used to work at our community college, and she would give me feedback, critical feedback. But also I got to talk through it, and that always helps. So that's one way to do it. Another way to improve your writing is to read this book by William Zinsser. This is the best book. Just the first half, I would say the first 100 pages of On Writing Well by William Zinsser. He talks about avoiding cliches. He talks about cutting out stuff that doesn't matter. He talks about cutting out words that are boring, replacing them with meaningful words. And so if you want to elevate your writing a little bit, avoiding the cliches, all that kind of stuff, On Writing Well by William Zinsser's got a lot of small tips on how to elevate your writing. And one of the things he really believes in is cutting. And so he thinks that if you have something that you're turning in, and he was a newspaper writer, and so a lot of times if somebody gave him something that was 2,000 words, he'd say cut it by 500 words, and then he'd say cut it, make it shorter. So his theory was also always like make it brief, make it powerful, and that's one of his theories that I think is really helpful. And sometimes cutting out if you're repeating yourself, if you're saying the same thing over and over. On the flip side, as an English teacher, I let my students choose what they want to write about. Probably 80% of the time, and a lot of times they don't write enough. So on the flip side, a lot of times students, they need to expand and elaborate on things, and so sometimes you got to cut, sometimes you got to expand, and the only way to know that is just a lot of times asking somebody else to read it. Why do you have to expand? Students will say, why does it have to be 3.5 pages? Well, if I'm asking you to write a paper about World War I or exposure therapy, these topics I don't know a lot about, then I need you to be the expert, do your research, and present the information to me, so that you just can't assume that I know about exposure therapy. You need to give me background on this stuff and expand. So students a lot of times don't expand, and they just assume that I know about World War I or exposure therapy, or you just can't assume that the reader knows everything about what you're saying. You know a lot about it, but you just assume the reader, knows these things too, and they probably don't. So slow down and expand, unpack some things. How do you become more confident? That's another student asked this. How do you become more confident? And I asked one of my friends who's a songwriter, and he has him and his wife, Daniel Goins. Daniel Goins is his name. His wife's name's Lauren. They have a band called Lowland Hum, and they're songwriters. They write the lyrics to their songs, and so he says he has 2 phases when he's writing, and he says, well, the first phase is the creation writing phase, and he calls this yes town, where he just kind of says yes to any idea that comes to mind. And then the second phase is the refining phase, and that's the phase whenever he decides to cut and critique his own work. So he tries to be really open at first, and so if you're not confident in your writing at first, it's okay to enter yes town and just be open to whatever comes to mind. The second phase is whenever you have to be open to refining and critiquing your own ideas, and that is that can be a big challenge, kind of what I was talking about earlier. In terms of confidence, I think if you establish things early, I'm repeating myself again. How do you become more confident? If you start your writing if you know you have to write something in, let's say, 3 weeks, like I said earlier, start early, and so by the time you're midway through, you've already thought through it and you've kind of established your ideas in your head. So the earlier you start, the more confident you'll be in what you've chosen. I'm not saying you're going to be super confident, but you're going to be more confident than trying to kind of be in denial that you have to write something until 2 days before it's due. So just the sooner you start, the better. Another person asked, how do you avoid rambling in an academic essay? And I want to say rambling is in the early phases, like what I just said with Daniel, my friend Daniel. Rambling is great. So when you're starting off, don't try to ramble. It's almost a good thing for you to ramble on a brainstorming activity, or if you're brainstorming, just make yourself ramble. So I find that students, I don't think students struggle with that as much, but maybe they do cut it out. But I think rambling as you are brainstorming is a very healthy, good thing. So if you want, and it can also, if you're brainstorming, you can just kind of flush the toilet of your mind, get it all on paper, and then you just know it's out, and you've got it out of your mind, and you're like, I've got this down, that's all I got. And then you look after you've looked at the page, you're like, wow, I see a couple of ideas there. So I want to encourage rambling. I don't think you should think of it as a bad thing. I think rambling is good. It's only It's only bad when it's in the final draft, and your final draft's not organized. So in the yes town phase, the early phases, ramble, get a journal, ramble in your journal, ramble on your phone, and that way you can get the ideas down. And so those are some of the main things, some common questions I get from my students, and it is a process. And just keep in mind that yes, some of these tips that I've given you are probably things you've heard before, but that's because they're tried and true, and it's just a matter of putting them into practice. And so just experiment with it, some of them. And the final thing I'll leave you with is just knowing that if you feel insecure, or if you feel like you're not a great writer, or a good writer, or a competent writer, just know that writing is a slow process. It's not something that happens fast, and just trust yourself a little bit as you go along, and you'll be surprised in what you can do. And that anybody can write something, that anybody can pass an English 111 class. Anybody can. I believe that, and it's just a matter of finding the right habits to do this particular project. I hope that's helpful. I'll finish up, and hopefully maybe I can do some other questions at another time. Thanks.